In the picturesque coastal town of Montero, where the waves of the Pacific gently caress the white sandy beaches, Carlos, a wealthy widower and devoted father, walks alone along the coast. His once firm and resolute steps now appear burdened with sadness. Carlos, known for his business acumen, is the owner of AB Bayramer, one of the largest and most luxurious in the region. However, after the unexpected death of his wife, the shine of his success faded, leaving a void that not even the stunning view of the resort could fill. "You always loved this place, Lara," murmured Carlos, looking out to the sea as if expecting to hear his late wife's gentle voice in the ocean breeze. His thoughts were interrupted by the ring of his cell phone. It's Marcos, his teenage son, whose voice still carries the innocence of youth but is now tinged with concern. "Dad, are you okay? You've been out for a while." "I'm okay, son, just needed some fresh air, you know. I'll be back soon." The truth is, Carlos feels adrift, navigating an ocean of memories and melancholy. His relationship with Marcos, though strong, is tested by shared grief and the silence that often settles between them. Marcos, trying to adapt to the new reality without his mother, struggles to understand and ease his father's pain. In this whirlwind of emotions, a figure emerges as a beacon of hope: Helena, Marcos's teacher, with her brown hair reflecting the autumn colors and a smile that brightens even the grayest days. Helena possesses a kindness that seems to transcend circumstances. Carlos met her during a parent-teacher meeting at school, where she warmly spoke about Marcos's progress. Over time, Carlos's conversations with Helena became more frequent, and he began to notice something more in them. One evening after a meeting, Carlos invited her for coffee. Sitting in the cozy cafe, surrounded by the soft murmur of other conversations, they talked about everything except school. "You know," Carlos began, looking at the coffee, "I can't remember the last time I had such an easy conversation." Helena smiled. "Sometimes life surprises us with unexpected connections. I'm glad we met." At school events, they found reasons to laugh together, and Carlos began to feel a lightness he hadn't experienced in a long time. At one of these events, while helping organize games for the children, her company had been a bomb. "Helena, I don't know how I would have gotten through these months without you," Carlos confessed. Helena replied gently, "We all need someone to rely on. I've also found comfort in our friendship." Marcos observes the growing closeness between his father and Helena with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. He never liked his teacher, finding her distant. As days passed and Marcos still struggled to process his mother's loss, he watched the changes in his father with a mix of worry and confusion. "Dad, you seem different," Marcos said one night during a silent dinner. "I'm trying, Marcos." "Trying for both of us," Carlos replied, trying to hide the pain in his eyes. Helena's presence became more constant, and Marcos couldn't help but notice. "Dad, why is teacher Helena always around?" "She's been a great help, son, a friend," but Marcos felt uncomfortable with this new dynamic. "I don't know, Dad. It's all happening so fast." "Mom is still remembered," Marcos expressed with downcast eyes, avoiding Carlos's gaze. "She will always be remembered, my son, but Helena has brought some light to this dark moment," Carlos added. In his room, Marcos lay looking at the ceiling, his thoughts oscillating between memories of his mother and Helena's increasing presence. He wanted to be happy for his father, but an inner voice whispered doubts and uncertainties. Meanwhile, Carlos faced his own demons in his office, surrounded by awards and recognition. He felt a void that no professional success could fill. "None of this makes sense without her," he confessed to a portrait of Laura, "but I need to be strong for Marcos." The relationship between Carlos and Helena continued to evolve, bringing a new rhythm to the home that had been immersed in grief. With her kindness and understanding, Helena gradually became part of the daily routine, offering Carlos a sympathetic ear and a supportive shoulder. The pain of loss still permeated the atmosphere of the house, but now there were also moments of timid laughter and meaningful conversations. Carlos began to wonder if there might be a fresh start for him and Marcos, even in the midst of their grief. But the doubt persisted: was Marcos ready for this new phase in their lives? As the seasons changed, Helena's presence in Carlos and Marcos's lives became increasingly constant and comforting. Their meals together were filled with lively conversation and laughter, a welcome change in the dynamics of the house. "You've brought a new energy to this house, Helena," Carlos commented one night as they watched Marcos laugh at a joke Helena had just told. "I'm glad to be here, Carlos. You both have become very important to me," Helena replied, smiling at both of them. However, not everything was peaceful in Carlos's world. One afternoon, while walking through the resort, a phone call left him pale and worried. "What happened?" asked Helena, noting his concerned expression as he entered the house. Carlos sighed deeply. "A major investment I made went wrong. We're facing a serious financial crisis." Helena looked at Carlos, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and compassion. "I'm sorry to hear that. If there's anything I can do to help." Carlos shook his head, grateful for the offer but uncertain about how to proceed. "Thank you, Helena. Just having you here is a great support." In the days that followed, the tension was palpable. Carlos struggled to keep the resort running while trying to find solutions to his financial problems. That's when Helena had an idea. "Carlos, my friend Richard has experience in finance. Maybe he can offer some guidance," she suggested one night during dinner. Carlos, initially hesitant, agreed to meet with Richard. After a long conversation and an analysis of the situation, Richard offered his help. "I know it's a tough time, Carlos, but I believe I can help turn this around," Richard said confidently. So, Richard temporarily moved into Carlos's house, bringing a new dynamic. However, not everything was peaceful in Carlos's world. One afternoon, while walking through the resort, a phone call left him pale and worried. "What happened?" asked Helena, noticing his concerned expression. Upon entering the house, Carlos sighed deeply. "A major investment I made went wrong. We're facing a serious financial crisis," he explained. Helena looked at Carlos, her eyes reflecting a mixture of concern and compassion. "Carlos, I'm sorry to hear that. If there's anything I can do to help." Carlos shook his head. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm uncertain about how to proceed." "Thank you, Helena. Just having you here is already a great support." In the days that followed, the tension was palpable. Carlos struggled to keep the resort running while trying to find solutions to his financial problems. That's when Helena had an idea. "Carlos, my brother Richard has experience in finance. Maybe he can offer some guidance," she suggested one evening during dinner. Carlos, initially hesitant, agreed to meet with Richard. After a long conversation and an analysis of the situation, Richard offered his help. "I know it's a tough time, Carlos, but I believe I can help turn this situation around," Richard said confidently. So, Richard temporarily moved into Carlos's house, bringing a new dynamic. Marcos watched cautiously, feeling uncomfortable with another stranger in their home. "Dad, who is this Richard? How long is he going to stay here?" Marcos asked, his voice revealing growing apprehension. "He's Helena's brother, and he's here to help us with some financial issues at the resort." "Don't worry, Marcos, it's just for a while," Carlos explained, trying to reassure his son despite Marcos's reservations. Richard quickly settled into the house, offering suggestions and strategies to regain the financial stability of the resort. Carlos felt relieved to have someone to share these challenges with, but he couldn't ignore Marcos's apprehension. "I understand that all of this may be a bit much for you, son," Carlos said one night, sitting next to the sofa. "But Richard is here to help us. He and Helena have been incredible." Marcos, although still suspicious, tried to accept the situation. "I just hope everything goes back to normal soon, Dad. I miss how things used to be," he replied, his voice low, reflecting the longing he felt for his mother and the time before all these changes. Helena, noticing an effort to maintain a light and welcoming atmosphere, said, "We will all overcome this together," with an encouraging smile. However, Richard's presence in the house, while financially helpful, began to create an uncomfortable atmosphere. His frequent hushed conversations with Helena and calculating looks did not escape Marcos, who began to question the true intentions behind the offered help. Carlos, focused on saving his resort and grateful for the assistance, did not notice Marcos's subtle signs of discomfort. The house, once a refuge of happy memories and love, had now become a scene of uncertainties and unspoken secrets, with each family member facing their own internal dilemmas. Weeks passed, and Marcos's distrust of Helena and Richard only grew as he observed their interactions, noticing glances and whispered conversations that left him increasingly uneasy. One night, while Carlos was reading in his office, Marcos decided to express his concerns. "Dad, can I talk to you?" Marcos began, hesitantly. Carlos set the book aside and motioned for his son to sit. "Of course, Marcos, what's bothering you?" Marcos took a deep breath, gathering courage. "It's about Helena and Richard. There's something about them that doesn't seem right. Don't you find it strange that they're always whispering?" Carlos, surprised by his son's observation, tried to reassure him. "Marcos, they're just helping us with the resort situation. There's nothing wrong with that." "But, Dad, do you really trust them? I mean, do we really know Helena and Richard?" Marcos persisted, his voice full of concern. Carlos looked at his son, his expression softening. "I know things have changed quickly, and it's hard for you, but Helena has been a great friend, and her brother is just helping us through a tough time." Marcos shook his head, frustrated. "I don't know, Dad. Something doesn't seem right. Are you being blinded by her?" Carlos sighed, torn between his growing feelings for Helena and his concern for his son. "I understand your concerns, but Helena has been a light in these dark times. I need you to try to accept her." Marcos stood up, feeling misunderstood. "I hope you're right, Dad. I just don't want us to get hurt again," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Carlos reached out, trying to reach Marcos. "I would never do anything to put us in danger, you know that. Please, trust me." However, Marcos was immersed in his doubts. "I want to trust, Dad, it's just hard. Everything is so different now," he said, leaving Carlos alone with his thoughts. Carlos remained seated, contemplating his son's words. He couldn't ignore Marcos's concerns, but he also couldn't deny his feelings for Helena. Maybe with time, Marcos will understand, he thought, but deep down, a seed of doubt began to sprout in the following days. Carlos observed Helena and Richard more closely, trying to discern any signs that could validate Marcos's concerns. Helena, always gentle and attentive, seemed genuinely concerned about him and the resort. Richard, on the other hand, was immersed in numbers and strategies, apparently focused on helping to reverse the financial crisis. However, Marcos's distrust continued to echo in Carlos' mind. Am I being blind? Am I letting my feelings for Helena blind me to something else? He questioned himself. Carlos' internal struggle intensified as he tried to balance his burgeoning love for Helena with his protective instinct towards Marcos. He knew he should make a decision, but doubt and fear of making a mistake haunted him. I need to be careful, both for myself and for Marcos, he thought, keeping his eyes open and his heart cautious. However, despite Marcos's distrust, Carlos continued his relationship with Helena and, with each passing day, fell more in love with her. And his doubts dissipated when spring brought not only blooming flowers but also a new chapter in Carlos and Helena's lives. During a romantic dinner under a starry sky, Carlos knelt, presenting a sparkling ring. "Helena, you brought light into my life when I needed it most. Will you marry me?" Helena's eyes welled with tears as much as the ring sparkled. "Yes, Carlos. I accept." The following weeks were a whirlwind of wedding planning. Carlos, although still dealing with challenges at the resort, radiated with the preparations. "It will be a new beginning for us, Helena, something we both deserve," he said as they discussed details of the big day. However, Marcos watched with growing apprehension. One night, as Carlos reviewed the wedding invitations, Marcos decided to express his concerns. "Father, are you sure about this? I mean, everything is happening so fast." Carlos looked at Marcos, his smile appearing for a moment. "Marcos, I know it's a big change, but Helena makes me happy." "Father, it seems like you're trying to replace Mom," Marcos responded with a voice choked with emotion. Carlos sighed, trying to choose his words carefully. "No one will ever replace your mother, Marcos, but we all deserve to be happy again. With time, you'll see that this is good for us." Marcos shook his head disappointedly. "I hope you're right, Father," he said, walking away and leaving Carlos alone with his thoughts. Flowers were chosen, a charming venue was reserved, and the guest list took shape. However, despite being excited, Carlos couldn't shake off the feeling that he was risking something precious. "I hope Marcos sees that all of this is done out of love," he thought, looking at Helena's engagement ring, a symbol of a future full of hope but also uncertainty. Time passed until the big day arrived. The church was elegantly decorated, with flowers emitting a gentle fragrance that mixed with the anticipation. Carlos, impeccably dressed in his suit, walked slowly towards the altar, his heart beating with a mixture of nervousness and joy. The guests stood up, turning to watch him pass by. Everyone smiled in celebration. However, Before Carlos could reach the altar, a resolute voice echoed through the corridor, "Father, wait." It was Marcos, his expression urgent. A silence fell over the church as all eyes turned to him. "What's going on, Marcos?" Carlos said, confused and worried. Marcos, firmly holding his cell phone, said aloud, "Father, I have to show you something. It's about Helena and Richard." He opened the player and the voices of Helena and Richard echoed through the church, their words revealing a nefarious plan to deceive Carlos. They planned that when Carlos signed the wedding documents, he would also be signing a document transferring all his assets to Helena. The crowd murmured in shock as Carlos remained paralyzed, each word feeling like a blow to his heart. Helena, caught off guard, looked bewildered, guilt replacing her mask of innocence. "How did you find out?" Carlos asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I suspected them, Father, remember. So, if I knew something wasn't right, I just wanted to protect you," Marcos replied. Carlos, looking at the crowd and then at Helena, felt a mix of great error and pain. The night was abruptly interrupted and the guests began to disperse, murmuring among themselves about the unexpected scandal. Carlos, still in shock, stared at Helena, who now avoided his gaze, unable to say anything. "I don't know what to say," Carlos finally said, his voice trembling. "How could you do this to me, Helena?" Helena, with tears in her eyes, just shook her head, unable to formulate a response. Richard, on the other hand, had already disappeared into the confusion, leaving only betrayal and disappointment behind. Carlos turned to Marcos, embracing him tightly. "You were brave, my son. I should have listened to you earlier. Forgive me for not realizing what was happening." Marcos, holding back tears, replied, "I just wanted to take care of us, Dad." Carlos left the church, feeling devastated but relieved to have discovered the truth before it was too late. That day, which should have been one of the happiest of his life, became one of the most painful. However, the bond between father and son strengthened, a small glimmer of hope amid the chaos of emotions. In the days following the disastrous wedding, Carlos sought refuge in the only source of stability left to him: his work at the resort and his relationship with Marcos. Amidst the emotional turmoil, the resort was his sanctuary and Marcos his anchor. "I'm here for you, Dad. I always will be," Marcos said in one of their nightly conversations, where they shared feelings and plans for the future. "I know, son, and I'm very grateful for that," Carlos replied, feeling a mixture of gratitude and admiration for his son. 2 years later, Mariana contacted Carlos. An intelligent and charismatic businesswoman, she was interested in a commercial partnership with the resort. During their first meeting, Carlos was impressed by her vision and passion for the work. "Your proposal is very intriguing, Mariana. I believe we can do something amazing together," Carlos commented, genuinely excited. As negotiations continued, a natural connection began to form between Carlos and Mariana. They often met to discuss plans and strategies, but soon their conversations drifted to personal matters, laughter, and shared stories. "You have an amazing way of seeing life, Mariana," Carlos said in one of these meetings, surprised at how easily they laughed together. "And you, Carlos, have a strength and kindness that are very rare," Mariana replied, her eyes shining with admiration. Seeing the change in his father, Marcos encouraged him, "Dad, I think you should go out with her. Mariana seems amazing, and you deserve to be happy." No one will replace Mom, but after Helena, you deserve someone good like Mariana. Carlos, initially hesitant, began to open up to the idea of a new love. Maybe you're right, Marcos. Maybe it's time to move on. As their professional relationship evolved, the friendship between Carlos and Mariana deepened, blossoming into something more. On a sunny afternoon, as they walked through the resort gardens, Mariana stopped and looked at Carlos. You know, I never thought I'd find someone I could share so much with, both at work and in personal life, she said. Carlos, looking into her eyes, felt a connection he hadn't experienced in a long time. Mariana, I really feel it. You brought a new light into my life, he confessed, his gentle voice, but full of emotion. It was evident to both that what they had was special. The conversations, the meetings, the shared moments began to weave a new love story in Carlos's life, who had closed his heart to love and now found himself opening it again, encouraged by Marcos's unwavering support. I'm happy for you, Dad, Marcos said with a smile, seeing the joy in his father's eyes. Mariana, it's amazing. You deserve this, Dad. Now revitalized by Marcos's support and Mariana's presence, Carlos felt ready to embark on this new journey. The business partnership had turned into a promise of companionship and love, bringing new hopes and possibilities for the future. With Mariana's arrival in Carlos's life, the lives of Carlos and Marcos gained a new brightness, and the atmosphere in their home was filled with joy again, with laughter echoing through the walls and filling the previously dark spaces with warmth and happiness. Mariana, with her contagious energy and easy smile, brought a sense of peace and joy that Carlos and Marcos hadn't felt in a long time. You brought joy back to this house, Mariana, Carlos said one night as the three of them dined together. Mariana smiled, holding Carlos's hand. I'm just sharing the happiness that you both brought to me. I've never felt so welcomed and loved. Observing the interaction between them, Marcos genuinely felt happy for his father. Dad, I haven't seen you this happy in a long time. Mariana is amazing, he said, his face lighting up with a sincere smile. At the resort, things also began to improve with the prosperous business partnership between Carlos and Mariana. New opportunities arose, and the resort began to thrive once again. Look at this, Mariana, Carlos exclaimed, showing her the growth reports. We're doing this together, Mariana replied, proud of the work they were doing. We make a team, Carlos. And this is just the beginning. The future, once uncertain and bleak, now seemed bright and full of promises. Carlos, Marcos, and Mariana formed a united family, supporting each other at every new stage and challenge. I feel like we're starting a new chapter, full of hope and happiness, Mariana commented one afternoon as they walked along the beach together. Agreeing, Carlos, holding Mariana's hand, said, "Yes, it's a fresh start for all of us. I never imagined that after so much pain and loss, I could find happiness again, but here we are." Marcos, walking beside them, added, "You know, I've learned that life always holds surprises, some bad, but many good. I'm happy that this surprise was you, Mariana." The trio stopped to watch the sunset, its vibrant colors reflecting the new phase of their lives. The waves gently broke on the beach, each one bringing the promise of better days. "Mariana, you showed us that even after the darkest night, the sun always shines again," Carlos said, looking out at the horizon. "With you and Marcos by my side, I feel like we can face whatever life brings us." And so, With hearts full of gratitude and eyes focused on the future, Carlos, Marcos, and Mariana embraced the new journey that life had in store for them. United, they left behind the shadows of the past, walking towards a future filled with light, love, and endless possibilities. If you enjoyed this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave your like and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. A big hug and see you soon.